The flatter landscape around Selby and the Yorkshire Wolds has fewer dry stone walls, but the area is still renowned for its extensive farming, bustling market towns and beautiful architecture, for example Selby Abbey. For centuries, the area has always been a major crossroad between York, Doncaster and Leeds, and travellers have traditionally stayed here to sample its hospitality, especially its ale. And no one knows the importance of a good brew more than Sue Simpson, who turned a lifelong hobby into a highly successful cottage industry as one of the country's handful of brewsters, the term for a female brewer. From her well-stocked and very compact converted double garage on the outskirts of Selby, Sue produces 360 gallons of homebrew a week, which she sells to 225 pubs and off-licences across the north. Her award-winning beers are now being supped by some of the most appreciative ale connoisseurs in the country.
Really, I just sort of fell into brewing in a way. I worked in an office for a long time. I was made redundant. I was left with time on my hands, and I thought, well, I'll just try and make things rather than go to the supermarket and buy mass-produced things. And I'm not just talking about beer. I'm talking about whatever you see, bread, jam, whatever. And I started home brewing. And then I sort of got the bug, and I wanted a job. And I wanted to work from home as well. I really didn't know whether I would succeed from the beginning because it's very male dominated. I would say there's probably only 2 or 3 other female brewers in this class. Well, here at the Brown Cow Brewery, we're classed as a microbrewery, which really is a small-scale commercial brewing plant. It's in between home brewing and the big brewery business, shall we say. What it's all about is brewing using very traditional ingredients and methods that have been used for years, since brewing began, really. Lots of the names of the beers are to do with the fact that we are the Brown Cow Brewery. We're called the Brown Cow Brewery because the house that we live in was the Brown Cow Inn. So we just try and pick up on names like How Now, Brown Cow, Brown Cow Bitter, which is the obvious one, Old Effer, Missle Mild, where Missle is an old milking parlour. But there's lots of other different names as well, too many for me to think about. Where we actually brew, we converted it from a garage, and outwardly it still looks like a garage. I used to have an old sports car, an MG, which I sold to start the brewery up, and a bit more besides. But basically it's just one room which we divided into 2, and that houses everything that you need. Most of the time I tend to work on my own, but my husband Keith helps out whenever he can. He does enjoy watching me brew, although he doesn't actually brew himself, and he does do the delivering whenever he can. The brewing process itself is quite a long process. It takes all day, you can't rush it. We start the day off by weighing in the dry ingredients, the malted barley. They then go into a vessel called a mash tun, which basically really I think is like a big teapot. As you say, you mash tea, then that's what we're doing. And we mix the malted barley, all the dry ingredients, with water at a certain temperature, which then sets a conversion into place, converting all the starch in there into sugar, and that's what we want. We want sugar, because that's what yeast feeds on and turns into alcohol, so you need lots of sugar. We only use natural sugar, we only use the sugar that comes from the malted barley, we don't use any refined sugar. Once it's been in there for an hour and a half, it's then run from the mash tun into another vessel called an underback, and then slowly transferred into the copper, where it's gradually brought up to boil. At the beginning of boil, the hops go in. Hops are very interesting these days. Apart from all your English hops, then there's hops from all over the world, all imparting very different tastes into a beer. We add the hops at the beginning of the boil, a certain percentage of them, which gives the beer its bitter taste. And then half an hour into the boil, I add some other hops, which will give them a certain flavour. It then goes into the fermenter, which takes about 30 minutes. At the end of that, the gravity is checked for customs and excise. The yeast is pitched, and then it sits in there for another week, going through its fermentation process before it goes into cask. Goes into cask, is stored in our cold room for a week, and then it's over to the cellarman. Either Keith or myself do the deliveries. We cover an area, we do North Yorkshire, West Yorkshire. We try to have a maximum of an hour's travelling time, and that's how we limit ourselves, really. There's not an awful lot of pubs that are true free houses that are able to take from independent sources like ourselves, so it is pretty much a niche market. The most popular beer that we do actually is the Brown Cow Bitter. It's a good traditional session bitter, and it's a very good seller. I think anything that's produced on a small scale is unique and special as opposed to anything that's mass produced. Anything that's handcrafted, you just put a lot of care into it because that's your product at the end of the day, and if there's anything wrong with it, it's your fault.
Now then, Puppy Jasper. Come on then.
I'm really glad I did what I did. There were certain people, I'm sure, that thought I would fail very quickly. Somebody once said to me, and it stuck in my mind, if you could turn your hobby into your job, then you will be happy doing it. And my hobby was home brewing. So that's what I decided to do, just take it that step further. I don't intend to expand. This is what I wanted to do, and this is how I'm going to stay.